all across space. All across time. Mysteries that we can't understand.
Dude, this is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
Looking into the stories and those behind them. Welcome to UAP Insight Podcast. Hey everybody, another awesome episode today. Today we have on Shane Frakes, aka OldVetSymposium. He is a multi-year veteran of the US Air Force, a psionic asset, clairvoyant investigator, and just an all-around great guy. Helps out with the Wounded Warrior Project and a lot of other incredible things that he's done. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring him on. How you doing today, Shane?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing good. Couldn't ask for a better day. It's nice weather and talking to one of the most insightful people that I've had the chance to meet. Yep. Oh, looks like a little slow there on the camera, but that's okay. So, I understand that you are a clairvoyant investigator, what's known as a P3 asset or a psionic asset, as well as a multi-year Air Force veteran. And you also help out with like the Wounded Warrior Project and stuff like that.
Yeah, I try to raise money for them. I'm a Wounded Warrior alumni. They helped me out quite a bit when I got out of the service. So,
Okay, so kind of tell me a little bit about your service. What was your orientation in the Air Force?
I joined the Air Force. Actually, I got to my first duty station September 9th, 2001. So that was my first day of active duty. Ended up being September 11th, 2001. So I think I was there during watch the towers fall, and then I ended up I think about a year later, I ended up being doing a tour in Pakistan, Jacobabad, Pakistan. I think it was 6 to 8 months or something along those lines. After that, I did another tour flying missions out of IUD, and we were flying sorties and delivering fuel through different places, Iraq, Afghanistan, and another tour in Turkey where we were supporting Iraq. But I was fuels, POL, petroleum oil and lubricants. So I loved it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I got out in 2010. So, but it was a little rough because from combat and all those other things, I ended up being diagnosed with PTSD. And that's why I was involved with Wounded Warrior and things along those lines.
Okay. So kind of if you're willing to kind of tell us kind of your favorite memory from your time in the service.
Oh, my favorite. I know it sounds wild, but Jacobabad, Pakistan was a pretty wild experience. I mean, because it was the start of the war, and as dangerous as it was, I look back and it was just a camaraderie, right? Living and dying, the chance of living and dying beside these people, so you all take care of each other. That's the kind of stuff you end up missing when you get out. So that, and then flying combat missions out of Qatar was a lot of fun because I'm not normally air crew, but I got a special SCI identifier that allowed me to fly missions. So I was psyched about that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun actually. I mean, just, being able to make some lifelong connections and, it's just seeing the world despite everything going on. That's something that a lot of people take for granted. Um, so during your time in the Air Force, what was kind of the weirdest thing that you had the chance to see?
weirdest thing I had the chance to see would be probably, I guess you'd say snipers and stuff sitting up on walls, right? The base that I was at was smack down. It was basically a Pakistani base, and they built a section for us on it. And on one of our perimeters was a huge wall. On the outside of that was Jacobabad. I think it was a town of like 200,000 people, and you could see spotters and people like that. We get sniped at and stuff all the time, or mortar fire. That's typically how it worked. But you could kind of see them up on the buildings. You can't really do much about it until they do anything. You just got to go about your business and do your job. It always blew my mind at how professional our military is. Just didn't matter the danger. Everyone's doing their job, from cooking to cleaning to pumping fuel or flying the aircraft.
Yeah, I have the utmost respect for any member of the military, Air Force especially. I have family history with the Air Force dating back to World War One, when it was still Army Air Corps. So they always will hold the utmost respect in my heart and my soul. So thank you for your service, and it's definitely something that I think more people should take the opportunity to do if they have the chance.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So let's kind of start at the beginning with you. So you are just a kid. Kind of tell me where you're from and what happened to you during your early years.
So during my early years, I got identified somehow by the United States government. I ended up getting pulled into a program that they were both testing me and, I guess, running experiments with my psychic abilities. So I did that from my youth, but that caused some early childhood trauma. And a lot of these memories, I have memories, but these programs, if people understood what we went through during them, right? So a lot of our memories are locked up in trauma, and they wouldn't make any sense to anybody. If you're going through one of these programs as a child, all those memories don't make any sense until you get to a place where you either research it or stumble upon this type of stuff, right? And you start realizing, hey, I went through that. Things along those lines. You start piecing together those memories with things or you talk to other kids who were in those programs, and you have shared memories about different things along those lines. So actually, after I left the program, I didn't think much of it because I didn't know what it was. I was just doing what I was told or asked by the adults that were there. So by the time I got to, I think it's 2020, because in between I joined the military, Wounded Warrior helped me out. I think it was about 2020 when the pandemic started. I was spending a lot of time outside just because, we were all stuck at home. And I started witnessing UAP like daily, every time I go outside. And it ended up being orbs. I had no clue what they were. I'm Air Force, right? So I should know what these aircraft are. But I decided I was going to try to figure it out. I didn't have anything else to do. So every night I'd get out there with a phone, and eventually I graduated to camera trying to record whatever this stuff was. But then it started getting closer. Like it got close enough that I knew, okay, this isn't definitely not an aircraft. And you could see that it looked like a ball of plasma or something. So I decided I actually watched Lou Elizondo. I think it was on the news, and they talked about UAP or something along those lines. And I think he mentioned UFO Twitter or something. And so I kind of logged on there, did the anonymous thing, right? Kind of posted my videos, trying to figure out what it was, and kind of graduated from anonymous because I decided, I researched this topic enough now that I want to do a podcast. So I started a podcast with a couple of buddies of mine. Roswell UFO Symposium is what it was, I think. And then I became a investigative reporter for the Roswell Daily Record. So I actually did, it was my time that I decided to do it on, just because I thought the topic was important enough, and trying to answer my own questions was really important. Had another couple podcasts on the topic. And then I think it was 2.5 years ago, I decided to switch from nuts and bolts crash retrievals to consciousness and meditation. So I started researching the various programs our government may have run that involve those. And that's when I started to stumble upon things that I had memories of when I was within those programs. And so from there, I spent most of my time researching it, and I went headfirst into training myself to do the various things they were trying to get me to do in the program. But I wanted to see if I put time and effort into it and really learning it, if I could hone these abilities. And that's what I spent the last couple of years doing. And so now I'm lucky enough that I'm a side consultant. I use these gifts, right? Entering the hypnagogic state, intuition, these things along those lines to do contract work for all kinds of people.
Okay, so kind of what are some of the training protocols that you've kind of gotten back into that are the same as when you were a kid that they were trying to train you into using?
Okay. So one of the things I have a memory of from a kid is constantly utilizing headphones. And I don't know what it was at the time, but now that I do this, I realize, like when I go into meditation, one of the things I'll use is either binaural beats, hemisync, Monroe Institute hemisync technology, or just white noise, right? And it helps me enter this state where I can have visions or get the telepathy and things along those lines. When I enter it easier if I use headphones. Well, I remember lots of time with headphones, right? And questions that make sense kind of to me now, them asking me things while I had these headphones on and doing this stuff. So now I spend a lot of time actually trying to train my brain to enter that state easier, because the hypnagogic states where a lot of this takes place. So that's what I do most of the time is I don't necessarily need headphones now. I can enter it easier, but yeah, that's one of the things I definitely remember, as well as like some of the other things that I do now is like remote viewing. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah.
So as a child, okay. So as a child, I also remember things along those lines. I mean, but we have to remember too, I'm an adult simply trying to piece information together with memories I had as a child. And that's difficult. And a lot of people get riled up about it. And you know, I'm trying to make sense of it. And there's a lot of us trying to do the same thing. So it's just one of those things. I mean, you're not going to remember everything that happened, and some of them may be fuzzy. And some of the other things that you do, you have to kind of lean into, I think that was this. Like, because now when I'm in meditation, I communicate with something, that I receive these telepathic and visual impressions from something. And oftentimes I get representations of non-human intelligence, avatars of all kinds of entities, right? Well, as a child, I have lots of experiences with that, right? But if you didn't know any better, you chalk that up to a wild imagination, hallucination, dreams, all these other things. But I do this easily enough now that I know a lot of the things that as a child that I chalked up to weirdness and all this was just this. And I had no idea what it was.
Okay. So have you ever had the opportunity to go back to the school you were in at the time that all this was happening as a kid and speak to any of the teachers or anything like that that were there during the process?
Not yet. I'm working on that, but I'll say that I was being removed from school, like for different periods of time, and wherever I was at looked like some kind of an academic setting. I remember what appeared to be scientists and I think military, right? Wherever I was being taken to. And, these individuals, the civilian ones, they weren't torturing us or doing anything along those lines. It was testing, just a lot of testing us and getting us to do different things. That's some of the things that I do now.
Okay. And what do you remember from the process of actually being taken from the school? Was it just kind of getting on a bus and going to this location that's separate from the school? Or was it just kind of you just realize you're there all of a sudden?
No, I have memory of a woman picking me up and then heading someplace, right? I know I have a memory of a place that has pillars on it that I would go to a desk, and then all the other memories are mainly going to be inside the facility that I have, right? I don't have a lot of memories of like how I got there, and it's not necessarily instantaneous because I have a memory of being picked up and entering somewhere, right, repeatedly.
Okay. So what do you remember about, like, do you remember anything from the exterior of the building that might be kind of a landmark that might help you identify it later in life?
Yeah, kind of, but I gotta. I mean, not necessarily, but I gotta hold on to that until see a lot of this because I'm going through and trying to work on finding this information. I'm hesitant to say much until I have more to kind of point to on it. So, I mean, I think I do, but I'm going to hold on to that for a bit.
Okay. I can respect that. Um, so what are some of the more difficult memories from that time? I know at one point you were stating that you remembered being put on a table and kind of spinning. Is that correct?
Yeah, being spun on something, and I don't know if it. My memory, I feel flat. You know, in my memory, I'm flat, but I don't remember if it's a chair or a table. But I'm spinning, and I specifically remember the out of body experience that I had. So um, I'm spinning, and then I just feel myself kind of pull down, and I remember looking up, and I could see the people kind of standing over me, but I'm looking up through me. And that was probably one of my first out of body experiences. I don't have any other memories of that happening again. Doesn't mean it didn't, but I only know this because I have out of body experiences now. So, I mean, I realize, okay, that's what's going on there.
Okay, so continuing on out of body experiences, do you try to trigger them on your own, or do they just kind of randomly happen?
I try to trigger them. It's what out of bodies isn't my forte, but I have them, and I can tell when they're coming. My body has like very specific reactions when I'm in meditation that it's about to happen, and once it happens, you can almost always tell, and when it ends, you can tell. Doesn't mean you always tell though, because I've had out of body experiences where in which I didn't even know I was in meditate. You know, I'd fallen into my meditative state or in the experience. I just came out of the experience and asked myself, wait, that couldn't have been real what just happened. But I never had a time where my mind was like, okay, I'm entering the state and I'm exiting the state, which is what usually happens, which was really interesting but concerning, right? Because the experience that I had was such that it was just fantastical, right? And then at the moment I came to from it, I didn't know that I had meditated. I thought to myself, did that really just happen to me? And I had to spend some time thinking, okay, no, because I went to meditate. So it was probably, I didn't know that it was happening at the time. And I could see how this happens to a lot of individuals. I honestly believe a huge part of us, humanity, has out of body experiences and they have no idea that they're having it.
Okay. And I had another question about that. During an out of body experience, how do you experience time? Does it just seem to flow normally, or is it almost as if you have the ability to go forwards and back in time?
So whenever you're having an out of body or you're astral traveling or astral projecting and things along those lines, for me, there's no flow of time. It's almost like, yeah, it's something you can traverse back and forth. I've seen past events. I've seen future events, which I've done some precognition, and then present, right? Things I've had an experience before where just it was just as simple. I was in meditative state, and then I guess I came into my out of body experience, and in the experience, I was just kind of laying there with my eyes open, looking around the room, and I could see what appeared to be people in the room with me, which then made me open my eyes and realize, wait, my eyes weren't just open. How was I seeing those individuals?
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. What would you suggest to someone who's not into the psi phenomenon to kind of help them understand where it's coming from? Kind of like on the scale of the whole phenomenon, if they're just getting introduced to psi and all of that, where would you start?
A good place to start is to look into remote viewing. And then when you do that, you could find people who are remote viewers, excellent remote viewers. You got Ingo Swann, Pat Price, and all these other individuals, right? Joe McMoneagle. Look into some of their books, and that's a great place to start, because I like to say that, remote viewing, it's very real. I've seen people do some amazing things with it, but it's just a small sliver of what psychic abilities can do with all of this stuff.
Okay, and what would you say that kind of the most impressive thing that you've seen with remote viewers has been? If you had to pick just one event.
Well, I've had a couple, and I've seen a couple where I've got visions before meditation where this is just an example of one of mine. I saw a really pretty woman putting on makeup and lipstick, and then I saw this scene in which there was some kind of a grave, and there was a body being pulled out of the grave by a bunch of cops, and there's mountains all around it, and so I drew it out and I posted it. And then a couple weeks later, I was on doing my news feed, and I came across the exact scene that I drew out, where a co-ed had been found, and there were cop cars all around, and they were extracting her body. It looked exactly what, I think it was a Colorado student. I've also witnessed multiple people. So I'm part of a group of psychics that I consult with, and I've seen some of them do some amazing things. Watching someone draw what they see in their mind, and then having a look at it, and then looking at the hidden photo or whatever they were supposed to draw, and seeing that they're almost identical will make you question things. So I get people want evidence, and there's lots of it, right? There's lots of things that are statistically an anomaly that we are able to do that we're just not looking into.
Awesome. And I understand that you tune in pretty frequently to specific Twitter space, which is Astral's remote viewing thing that he does on a weekly basis. Um, so during that, what has been kind of the most impressive thing that you've seen?
And I highly recommend that if you're interested, anybody, if you're really interested in learning about it, Thursday nights is when Astral has this remote viewing space. Hop in. Just to get the basics. Everyone practices trying. You'd be surprised. In those, I've seen, this is actually interesting too. I've seen individuals, like multiple individuals, get close to a target, like get things that are similar. Like to see 3 or 4 people who may not have got the target, but 3 or 4 people draw the same thing almost, right? That makes you wonder, how this is exactly working, right? I mean, 3 people, different people, they draw a similar image, even if it may not be that image. There's something going on there. So I like seeing stuff like that, but I also like seeing multiple people when they get it, and seeing variations of the target, right? It seems to be like it's the target they're drawing, but they may have a different drawing than, I guess, person B who has the target, and they've drawn something completely different from that target.
Okay. Yeah, I know one thing that Joe McMoneagle said on Alchemy American just last week from when we're recording this. When you're viewing a target, you shouldn't go for, the most obvious thing that pops into your mind. You should kind of scale down your expectations of what you're seeing. So instead of a sewage treatment plant, you see water, bad smell, stuff like that. What is your views on kind of that take of it?
Analyze it, but you don't up analyze it, you down analyze it.
What does that
For
mean?
instance, your subconscious has no language. The information probably comes out of the subconscious. So, since it has no language of its own, it borrows from your memory. So, let's say the target is a sewage processing plant.
Mm-hmm.
Few people have ever seen a sewage processing plant, but it looks somewhat similar to an Olympic swimming pool.
Right.
So your subconscious will give you the image of the last swimming pool you saw. And the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to come to the conclusion based on that it's an Olympic swimming pool. That would be a mistake. What you do is you tear it apart. Why did I get the image of the swimming pool? What about that is real and what about that is not? And so you do things, you ask yourself questions about that entire thing that you just got. Things like, would I swim in it? Oh God, no. Why not? Well, taste it and find out.
No, I 100% agree with that. It's almost like the easiest way to explain it, it's almost like a symbols game. So each of us have our own Rolodex of things we know, understand, experience. So when we get this information, it comes to us, even if it's the same information, may come to each of us differently. I often get, like when I get a scene, like when I go to meditation, if I'll get a visual, which is be a vision, right? With telepathy, like them talking. So what they're saying at the scene. Also with some colors or smell and things along those lines. But I have to spend time, and it's very important to spend time using intuition, discernment, and kind of trying to feel it out to make sure what you're seeing is what I guess the information you're getting is the information that you're supposed to be getting, because there tends to be, I guess you would say, a lot of information, and not all of it pertains to what you're looking for.
Okay, yeah. So kind of a lot of noise is something that
Yeah.
can intrude.
Yes.
So what other things are possible with psionic abilities from what you've been able to learn since starting your journey into this?
Well, I do believe communication between individuals. I think in individuals that have these abilities, which all humans have these abilities, it's a matter of training them, and the strength at which they are there is going to be, luck of genetics and some other factors, right? But can you ask that question again? I lost it I'm sorry.
Yeah. What would you say is kind of the most impressive thing that people with psi abilities
Oh,
would be able to do?
precognition, telepathy to each other, receiving telepathy. Right. Another thing that I wonder a lot is, because I get information, sometimes I'll work, investigate homicide cases, things along those lines. And I'll get information about targets or individuals and things. And I have to ask myself, say, where's the telepathy or the visions coming from? Is it consciousness? Is it NHI? Is it the individual victim? Right. Because I think all these things are interchangeable. What I do could be considered a medium in someone else if they chose it, right? I say NHI because non-human intelligence. I don't know what it is. It's just not human. But whatever it is I'm communicating with, it's given me information that I'm able to utilize in ways that end up working out.
Okay. Yeah. So, have you had a chance to listen to the telepathy tapes yet with Kai Dickens?
So I have got a chance to some of it. I'm not a big podcast guy. I should do more listen to more of the podcast, but I spend about 3 hours a day in meditation, and a couple hours doing my work or whatever stuff along those lines. I have a tough enough time just getting myself to watch TV or do anything along those lines. I've watched some of it, and I will say that I know the doctor whose work it's based on. I've met her and talked to her, and yeah, her work is impressive, no doubt about it. And she brought this to attention, brought this out so others are seeing, hey, telepathy is very real. Kai Dickens, I think it's Dickens, Kai, who's the director, was just on Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a very great thing, but I also want the world to know, like, nonverbals aren't the only ones. Others in your audience, myself included, are able to do these things. It's just a matter of figuring out if you can and then working on it. I imagine it was a great experience for them when they were putting that thing together, the telepathy tapes, because that's real data, real evidence about something that I'm discussing and that we all tend to hear about, but no one wants to believe. It's a very real thing.
Okay. Yeah. So, kind of want to ask another couple questions about remote viewing. What are some things that you should avoid when trying to enter like a hypnagogic state in order to remote view?
Okay, so if you want to do this stuff, some of the things you need to cut out, well, you don't have to cut out. You got to be wary of caffeine. Stimulants of any kind can affect you getting into that state. That includes nicotine, so you just got to be wary of these things. Another thing I warn people about: don't go in unprotected. Use I say a prayer. There's other ways, other things you can do when you go in, because it's not always love and light. You're going to enter and come across some things that aren't, I guess, the greatest. It can be scary, it can be dark, and you can bring things home with you for sure. But I encourage people to explore, protect yourself, and if you keep pushing, it's just like a constant unlocking of not just abilities, but of knowledge and just all these other things, right? The more you do it, the more it intertwines with everything you do in your life. I can't walk around daily without using my clairsentience or my other psi abilities for work or home.
Okay. So kind of your clairsentience as you described it. Can you kind of explain that a little bit, just in case anyone's not fully understanding of that term?
Yeah, so my body, I'm pretty sensitive to electromagnetics and all kinds of energies, but I'll receive energies on different parts of my body, right? That's clairsentience. And so what I've done is I've spent enough time utilizing it that I kind of developed a language with consciousness. I kind of understand if this happens, it means this. If this happens, it means this. And I utilize it for pretty much everything, right? And so with this clairsentience, one of the other things I get is my body will react. My chakras, the energy and things along those lines will start going crazy when I'm around other individuals that have these gifts, or if I need to pay attention to something or someone, my body will alert me through these energies. So then I'm like, okay, what is it I need to see?
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like such an incredibly useful thing that everybody should be able to have access to. What would you recommend for someone just getting into the practice of it to help them enter a hypnagogic state to be able to start exploring these abilities?
I know the Monroe Institute has a couple apps that you can get. I think it's Flow. It's called HemiSync technology. That's a really good one. I recommend it. Binaural beats of any kind. You just got to find something that hits the spot for you, and you can kind of mess around with it. White noise even works if you're one of those individuals that can fall into that state pretty easy, right? I also recommend, if you really want to try this out and, a boost, you can use a near infrared light. It's 850 nanometers nm, right? And use it on near infrared mode, have it cast on you on your head, face. And what it's doing is we've noticed that it gives us boost to the telepathy, the vision, things along those lines, but it also creates kind of a backdrop for these images to appear. So a lot of people I know end up using one of these. You can even put it on you and cast it on you while you sleep, because I'm also a practitioner of lucid dreaming. Like, I set my things up so I can lucid dream and just let it sit on you, and it'll make them intense.
Yeah, that sounds like a great starting point. So lucid dreaming. What is kind of the point of lucid dreaming from a psionic standpoint?
Well, there's an information exchange that goes on anytime you're in the hypnagogic state, which can be just in meditation when you're in that in between, or if you're in full dream mode, right? When you're lucid dreaming, there's lots of information that you can pull out of there and then later utilize. Which there's been times that I've actually set it up so that when I had a tasking, I tried to get the information from a dream, and I've came out with information that I thought that ended up being valid. So within the lucid dreaming state, it's a double-edged sword. There's good and there's bad. People have nightmares, and there's a reason for that. I think it's a natural way of healing us from some of our childhood traumas, things along those lines. You just got to be able to kind of start learning to guide those explorations in a lucid dream. You can go from vivid dreaming to lucid dreaming. And I highly recommend individuals look into the mild method, which just consists of, about 5-6 hours into your sleep, you wake yourself up so that you're still kind of sleepy, and immediately start meditating. And typically when you fall back asleep, you're going to have a lucid dream. There's I don't remember the name of it now. I think it's on my Twitter. But there's also a supplement that you can take that it increases the ability to have dream lucidity, which these states are pretty amazing. You can come out of these states feeling like you experienced whatever you experienced there in real life. I mean, it can change things for you, as well as the information that you pull from it is just amazing.
Okay, so what would you give as an example, if you could, of kind of the most specific thing you've been able to pull from a lucid dream that has helped you?
Let me think. not necessarily helped me, but a piece of information that ended up coming true. I was in a lucid dream and I was looking up at the sky, and as I'm looking up the sky, I see this jet and it's tumbling towards me. It's one of our fighter aircraft and it's just falling straight at me. So I ended up waking up and I wrote it out and I put it online, and then ended up, like, I think a day later, or maybe 2 days. No, it was a day later, in San Diego, I think one of our jets fell out of the sky into the bay and 2 pilots were injured. Just things along those lines happen frequently. Or, witnessing in one of them, I also somehow was with our government, right? I was in the sky with our government on some kind of a craft, and I was witnessing them utilize what appeared to be advanced technology that they had reverse engineered, right? I don't know what it was, but I was just standing there watching them use it out of the back of it, right? And I later ended up using that for a thing, and I ended up writing up. So,
Okay. And I have a theory on that, and that's I guess theory wouldn't be the right question, but it's more of an idea, and it's that some of the higher echelon, upper level government individuals that are part of reverse engineering programs tend to use people like yourself, psionic assets, to reach out to others during hypnagogic states, lucid dreaming states, in order to kind of get it baseline knowledge across the world. Do you have any thoughts on that?
you know what? I like that. I like that hypothesis. I've asked myself a couple times, who sends me some of this information? How's this going? You know, that's one that I hadn't thought about too much, but I actually like that quite a bit, because I'm telling you, just from things that me and a group try to experiment with and what others have experienced, right? There's a way to communicate between individuals, right? Send information.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you like it. I've been kind of thinking about that for the last couple of weeks, since I actually started working on the protocols that you've laid out, especially the mild method. And I think that I really hope that there is some credence to that, because it might help provide some answers.
Yeah.
So going forward, during your time in the Air Force, looping back to that, was there any signs, any like sixth senses or whatever, that helped you throughout your tours of duty?
My intuition. I didn't know what intuition was, though. I'm a firm believer that you could be psychic, but if you live in surroundings that don't believe in that, you won't be psychic. I didn't know what intuition was. Heck, even when my intuition kicked into super high gear, when I started seeing the UAP phenomenon, like Jacques Vallée talks about, people often have some kind of psychic awakening. Yeah, mine went crazy, and I didn't know what to call it, so I called it ridiculous names, right? But I talked about it all the time. Like, I just used it for everything. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Just my intuition, kind of. But I think a lot of people, CEOs, a lot of individuals, don't even realize they're functioning on being an intuit, right?
Okay. Have you ever noticed any interference from things such as like electronic warfare capabilities, be it planes or ground systems, anything like that, that affect your ability to use your psionic abilities?
Yes, actually. And I'm not the only one that's experienced this. And there'll be a book that's coming out next year. Scott Andrews' memoir talks a little bit about the directed energy weapon attacks and Havana and things along those lines. But I've had experiences where I've been targeted by something, because again, I'm sensitive and I can feel things. And I think I've posted about it as well online. I'm not sure what it is or who it is, but it makes sense. If non-human intelligence or whatever it is that's communicating with me, if I communicate with and get this information from, is interested in me, I'm sure the government, because I was already in a program, has been very aware of me and has been monitoring or uses stuff like that to prevent us from doing things or talking about certain things.
Okay. And along those lines, is there anything else that can specifically affect your ability to use these things that you've developed outside of like electronic warfare, directed energy, anything like that?
Runaway fungal infections, fungus, right? I try to avoid yeast. Parasites is another one because the inflammation that it causes in our brain interferes with intuition and things along those lines. Those are important. Also, for me, alcohol is not effective, right? When you're using intuition and you're, however you want to say it, full spectrum awareness, you're paying attention to everything around you. Things that inebriate you make it difficult to do those things, right? Because oftentimes in conversations, my clairsentience will kind of go to kind of alert me that what they said is something I need to pay attention to or something along those lines. So if I'm inebriated, I miss things, and it's just one of those type of things. So I try to avoid those things. And anything that, like, I don't do coffee after a specific time. I'm one of those, I have a coffee in the morning, but because I want to be able to enter that state. And then I don't do coffee at all if I'm doing my 3 times a day meditations, right? Because it really interfere.
Okay. So kind of walk me through your experiences with UAP, UFOs, however terminology you like to use. What kind of effects did you notice after you started witnessing them?
After I started witnessing them, I think it was probably about 6 months in, maybe something along those lines, that I had a really close encounter with an orb. Came towards me, it's probably 200 to 300 feet, I don't know, something like that. And then next thing I remember, it's going away from me. So I go inside, I'm feeling a little funky. I go inside and I lay down, and it almost feels like that was the moment there was a switch kicked on my intuition. I lay down and I started just getting all this information. It was just overwhelming, right? And then from that point, I kind of proceeded to start riding that intuition really hard before I knew what intuition is. I've also, so I've taken these UAP or UFOs that I've experienced. It would be so frequent that it didn't matter where I went, what state I was in, or who I was with. I shared the experience with people multiple times, right? I'd travel down to Roswell to meet with my writing partner. Ended up having an experience with him and the owner and their family. And then, another experience I had was I had a buddy of mine, Dale, who was Navy guy, ex-Navy guy, and he wanted to have his first UAP experience, and he didn't live too far. So I said, I can't promise anything, but let's try it. And so we did. We tried it. And he had his very first experience. It was waiting for us outside when we got up at 2:30 in the morning, just right there. He's been having experiences since. I've also, I'll say that they can be summoned through high CE5, but let's not kid ourselves. They know what we're intending before we do it. That's the important thing, right? If they can connect to us through consciousness like I do, then there's no fooling them into tricking them to come so we can shoot them. I don't think it's going to work that way.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a feeling that they can sense intentions a lot better than, we can as humans. A lot of times, you won't know until the action happens with humans what the intention behind it is. But I have a feeling that because these NHI, these orbs, UAP, UFO, because of how advanced they seem to be, they seem to be able to determine the intention behind the summoning long before it's ever appeared. Um,
I agree with that,
so,
actually.
what's that?
I totally agree with that.
Oh yeah, yeah. So, I know companies like Skywatcher are currently trying to collect a lot of data. You got Skywatcher, Project Contact, quite a few others that are attempting to use these CE5 heist protocols to summon craft and gather data on them. Do you think that at any point we'll be able to successfully get one to ground to be able to learn more about it. And one of these companies likely wouldn't keep the craft if they were able to get one down, but release it back to whatever is controlling it or anything like that. At least I would hope so. Do you think that's a possibility?
I do. All I can say is this: I've actually taken part in events that you're describing. I just can't say anything else about it. The reason I did is because I know from my own contact communication that there's a possibility. Now, everyone needs to kind of slow their roll a little bit. Just because we say there's a possibility, people start freaking out, then do it. That's what we're trying to do. If it had happened before and we could just repeat, but it hasn't. But we are attempting it. Lots of us are attempting it, right? Especially, I love that science is now taking this stuff seriously. So, yeah, individuals like myself are being utilized to try to summon UAP because we're connected to them.
Awesome. And kind of how does that connection feel like in the deepest part of you? What is the general feeling that you get when you are able to come in contact with one of these?
Oh, I don't even know if it's describable. I can try. So there have been moments during contact, right, where I'm doing the vision, telepathy, clairsentience, all in my meditation, just communicating, getting information, asking questions, just otherworldly. I can feel just my body feels my chakras, the energy in my body. It's an amazing feeling. I mean, you just feel every bit of it, and you can feel every sense, and it feels like you're just there. So it's one of the most amazing experiences I think I had when it happens, and it happens frequently. But the times that I claim it to be like just otherworldly amazing, those are the times where it seems like everything's in sync during my meditation. I'm getting everything. And there are other times where I just get bits and pieces, which was a lot of psychics and clairvoyants we deal with. It's a constant thing. So yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. Now, that being said, like I mentioned earlier, you got to protect yourself. I've had experiences where the complete opposite, because when I first started doing it, I figured out that I was good at it without knowing how to do it. So I was having some pretty wild experiences before I got a little control. But other than that, when I connect with NHI, yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Okay. Yeah, I know Jake Barber has kind of described it as a very almost religious type experience, kind of like a religious transformation the first time he was able to connect with one of these during a retrieval. Would you say it's kind of a similar feeling to that?
Absolutely, actually. A lot of people don't like that because it gives it religious overtones. But whatever's been here, I think has always been here, right? Um, one of my experiences that I can tell you right now, I was in that sync mode, right? And I was in communication, receiving telepathy, visions, and then I was also asking questions and communicating. And I specifically asked, because I was just like, hey, what are you? And my body gets intense with just almost feels like fire, right? Just energy. And then I hear guardian protector. And then just instantly, I can't explain it outside of my body. Love, like extreme love. And I know it may be a chemical thing. I don't, but so I get what he was saying, but people have a hard time with that. That's the only way I can explain it, right? It happened. And afterwards I was so amazed. My heart was racing. I was just basking in what felt like a glow, just thinking about the experience I just had, right? And it was one of the first times that I was asking questions and getting answers directly. But yeah, amazing experience.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely incredible, and I mean, I aspire to be able to kind of go through that myself. And I think many others should also aspire for that. So I think we're getting close to the end here, at least for now. I'd love to have you back on. But there's a couple questions that I like to ask everybody. First question is, what is your favorite food?
It broke up. I didn't hear that question. I'm sorry.
What would you say is your favorite food or meal or anything like that?
Well, my favorite's one I'm really trying to break myself of. So I love steak, right? Um, I went vegetarian for quite a while doing this, trying to test out different lifestyle diets and things to enhance it. But that was the hardest thing for me to quit was steak. I love steak. And then I think now I'm kind of more into, I guess you'd say, a vegetable, plant-based diet with some added seafood here and there. So I love seafood.
Okay. And any kind of dessert that's like your guilty pleasure?
So I rarely do like dessert or sweets, but when I do, I just had mine for my birthday actually, a cookie cake, just a giant cookie that they cover in icing and it says happy birthday and stuff. And I ate way too much of that.
Oh, that's okay. That just kind of helps reset your mindset and, allow you to kind of move forward and know that you treated yourself once in a while. So I think that's all we'll really have time for today. But if you're willing, I'd love to have you back on once some of your NDAs clear and stuff like that. If you'd be willing to.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you want. And keep me updated, man. You got my number. I want to hear how your progress is going as you practice meditation and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I will.
All right. Thank you for having me on. I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. All right, that was an incredible talk, and I'm looking forward to the next time I get to talk with him. Um, so if anyone's wondering, I will be including links to Shane's X or Twitter on the description below, as well as a link to the Wounded Warrior Project. So if you'd like to donate, please do. I highly encourage it. So Shane's Twitter is at OldVetSymposium, and yeah, so looking forward to my next few guests. And once again, Shane, thank you, man, for coming on. It was incredible. Thank you for everything that you've done for our country and for those of us in the UFO community. So thanks again.